I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host and the most prominent political commentator in Lions Bay, BC. Welcome back to the Goddard Report, Rafe.
Thanks very much, Jim. Always a pleasure.
Rafe, the Mars water bomber, the world's most effective firefighting piece of equipment, still sits idle. Well, now the fire around Fort McMurray is twice the size of Calgary. BC's northern area has been burning. All the forecasters tell us we're in for our worst forest fire season in 10 years. Why are they not using this piece of equipment?
Well, I've kind of made it my business to stay out of that, Jim. I got into it to begin with. I got a lot of people phoned me up and wrote me and asked me to delve into it. I wrote to members of Parliament and so on, and I got the same letter back from each one of them, obviously written by the same person, saying we're very thankful for, and at that time it was the Russian bombers. They're obviously some of the best in the world, but thankfully we don't need them, blah, 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 blah. And I guess I decided, Jim, I'm not an expert on fire bombers. They are. They've decided not to use them. However, it certainly doesn't make much sense to me. The better bomber you can use, I would think the more you would use it. But I don't know, Jim. Isn't it a frustrating world? You and I talk, and don't you sometimes wish to yourself you could go off on a desert island with some maybe a Benny Goodman CD and just pass the rest of your time sipping gin?
Well, for me, it would be a Led Zeppelin CD. But, Rafe, I mean, people may not understand. The Mars water bomber, it lands and takes off on water. So although it's 70 years old, it doesn't get the stresses and strains that landing gear gets on other older planes. So it's in perfectly good shape. It has an artificial horizon cockpit. It can fly in smoke. It can fly at night, unlike other aircraft, so it wouldn't be grounded. It puts out 4 acres or 2.5 hectares of fire at a time. You could see how it could save a suburb like in Fort McMurray all by itself in the space of a couple of hours. Why somebody wouldn't use this? And by the way, the Russians did again offer some of their monster firefighting aircraft because they have forest fires in Siberia that make the Fort McMurray fire look like a barbecue. And again, their offer of help was turned down. Now, to me, this smacks purely of politics, not practical policy, where people's lives and property are on the line.
Well, Jim, I can't understand it myself. I obviously have no answer for it. And on the surface, it seems to be an insane policy. I can't, using the best stretching of my mind, come up with any reason why they would. I haven't heard any reason why they would that makes any sense to me. So I'm with you. I don't know why they're not doing it. I guess maybe it gets back to Mair's Axiom 1, that you make a very serious mistake, assuming that people in charge know what the hell they're doing.
The National Energy Board gave its conditional approval to the pipeline between Edmonton and Burnaby. Nearly 160 conditions. Is this thing viable?
I don't think it's viable, and I don't think the people are going to allow it to happen, Jim, but that's just my guess, my speculation. But we should be learning lessons from this. We've been going along for a hell of a long time, as a matter of fact, for as long as I can remember, with things like the National Energy Board, which are fixes. There's no other way you can put it. These people, the judges, are all drawn from people who are going to come to the conclusion the government wants. I mean, that violates the very first principle of natural justice. And we've been going along uncomplainingly with this for as long as I can remember. Large and small, National Energy Board, the small environmental assessment things, such as we had for the wood fiber LNG, which was a horrible farce. And we just been sitting back and accepting it from the authorities. And until we finally rise up as one and say, no, we wouldn't accept this in our courts, making decisions that are no more important financially than this, why would we accept it from these people? And what an awful hypocrisy to go through all of that time and effort and evidence and so on when you know what the result is going to be. It really is a shame, Jim. I'm sort of on this right now. I've got an article in the Common Sense Canadian right now on this, and we have an utter absence of democracy, and people have got to understand, and if I can take just 10 seconds, a democracy such as we have is supposed to mean that the person we elect represents us in the Parliament. That means they stand in for us. They do for us what we would do if we were there ourselves. Well, that is nothing of the sort. Nowhere near the case. The person we elect to go to Parliament goes for the leader of the party and does what the leader says, and that's the end of it. And it didn't take us a month to find that out with our new MP here in our area with Pam Goldsmith and the wood fiber LNG. And I don't blame her, except she should have known better. But this is the way it is. We have no representation at all. My representation in Parliament is the same as yours is, Justin Trudeau. And until we really understand that isn't just talk. You know, people say, that's just chatter. That's like the old beer parlor chatter. No, it isn't. That's exactly the way it works. Until we come to grips with that and realize that we have lost control of our own destiny, and when we give away things like pipelines, the decision to people who have already made up their mind and come from the group of society that is going to most benefit from it, then we really have to give our heads a shake.
The National Energy Board banned the public from their so-called public hearings here in BC. Doesn't that kind of show that it was just a sham?
Oh, it's been a sham right from the beginning. I think Mark Eliason did a marvelous job when he resigned about a year ago, and it was such that I took a letter of resignation and kept it amongst my documents. It's so brilliant. And he just outlines it chapter and verse, and here's a man that's been the head of 3 major power companies in Canada, and outlines what this thing was all about. And when you don't allow the cross-examination of witnesses, now, I guess maybe, Jim, you'd say, oh, well, that's because Rafe's a lawyer. Well, I don't know. It would be just like saying to a doctor, you can go in the operating room, but for God's sake, don't take any knives with you. You can't have any knives.
Don't take any x-rays.
Into hearings like this, and I can't cross-examine. What's the purpose? What's the reason? Why on earth am I going to do it if I can't do that? So but I think the alarming thing is we just sort of accept it. We roll with it. We don't rise as one and scream blue bloody murder. And Trudeau is no better than Harper, and yet we're just sailing along. And I despair. I should say I get signs from what I hear right across the country that people all over are getting to be more than just a little pissed off at all of this, and it's going to start to roll. I hope so. I know that Damien and I are going to spend a lot of time in the next year, if I have much time left to me, to work on this, because it's so serious. It would be laughable if Peter Sellers were starring in it. That's really what it is. It's terrible.
And of course, yes, Peter Sellers, for the younger listeners, watch the movie Dr. Strangelove. He plays, I think, 3 or 4 roles there brilliantly.
Oh, that's one of the most brilliant performances I've ever seen in my life. Dr. Strangelove, how I learned to live with a bomb. It's great, and it's fashionable now again. It's out and around, so you can pick it up. I think it's on Netflix and so on. It's a great thing. With this National Energy Board and the other ones that are coming up, because we have the little replicas of this all going on all of the time. And as I say, I don't mean to sound like too much of a homer, Jim, but if you took a look, and I think you did, at the one that decided the wood fiber LNG, I mean, that was laughable. It was so bad. I mean, it really and truly was. And I know I probably repeat myself, but when my friends in the community were going to go and participate in it, I said, look, I've participated in a dozen of those damn things with the Run of Rivers IPP thing. And I would rather have a root canal without the anesthetic than go through another one. They're awful. And that's exactly how it turned out to be. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a decision, which means you hear both sides of the evidence, hear it and adjudicate it fairly, and come down with a fair decision. You don't go in there with the decision already made up, and maybe even the judgment written. Well, there we are, Jim. That's what we're doing, and of course, the Liberals promised change, and I haven't seen any of you.
Rafe, could you see this thing being easily challenged in the courts?
I've given that a lot of thought, and my instinct says yes, because I'm sort of a natural justice kind of guy that operates in the way my belly feels. But I've had a number of lawyers, and I remind my listeners that your listeners that I haven't practiced law since December 1975, so that's a long, long time ago. But lawyers that I know now say they doubt very much if it would be heard. I can't understand why not. It takes me back to my administrative law classes in law school, and administrative law has to be administered according to the basic rules of justice, and these aren't. But in any event, I guess the first step, I think, Jim, is that we start to get mad at this. We start to get angry, start to pay attention to this. I mean, we are just being shammed right from the beginning, and it's just wrong, basically wrong.
Well, to show the kind of information the pipeline companies can put out, the protests in Burnaby had hundreds of people arrested. It turns out the coordinates the pipeline company gave the police were wrong. Those people were falsely arrested. They were on public property. They had every right to be there. And I haven't seen any apology or compensation for those people who had to buy, buy lawyers. I guess you hire lawyers. But they're out of pocket. The city of Burnaby thinks those people are out $1 million.
What do they say? Never explain, never apologize. And that seems to be the mark of the day. That's the way they do it. It's wrong. You see, we have to start with some basic thinking, Jim. Go right back. You know, if you ever the days back when you and I were a little younger, and they went to what did they call it? Was it bottom line? They went right back to the very beginning, took the economic thing step by step back to the beginning and started over again to see whether it was working. Well, that's really what we have to do here, is go back to the very beginning and ask yourself, first of all, whose land is this? Whose water is this? Whose atmosphere is it? Whose summer homes and winter homes and all of the rest of it along the coast are they? Who owns these things? Are they owned by Kinder Morgan? Do they have the right to come and put them at risk because the government says they can? I don't think so. I don't think that's what governments are supposed to do. And the other hard thing we have to swallow, Jim, is, of course, we're told, just like our mummies and daddies told us, you've got to obey the law. What if the law is made exclusively by and for the segment of people who profit from it, and that nobody else has a say in it? Because that's exactly what happens. Do you remember having any say in any of this? Any of the legislation leading up to it? Any of the pipeline legislation or any of the discussions? Do you remember big public meetings where political parties came and said, do you want this, Jim? Do you want it? Of course you don't. Not organized other than by the protesters themselves. We've got the cart before the horse, and we have to assert ourselves again. This is our land. This is our water, for goodness sake. And once we start doing that, it's going to take a while. I think it's starting now, but once we get that in our mind and work from there, I think the governments are in a hell of a lot of trouble with a lot of these projects coming down the pike.
It's like they're ignoring the words of the national anthem.
Oh, that's exactly it. That's exactly what they're doing. You start off with a basic anthem or theme for your country. This is what you do, and from the first bar on, you do something else. It's absolutely not right, but it's up to us. You're not going to find the Prime Minister of Canada giving civics lectures on this. He loves it this way, and he's no different than Harper. Anybody that thinks that this guy, because he smiles a lot and seems like a much nicer guy, now it's pretty hard not to be a nicer guy than Harper, but seems to be a much nicer guy and so on, that he's going to be a better Prime Minister for us. He has exactly the same motivations that all prime ministers do, to run the show. And if people only understood how tightly he runs that ship, they would be horrified. There is no dissent. And when you go to your MP, they'll say, oh, yes, we dissent, oh, yeah, in caucus we do it. Jim, that's bullshit. I mean, I've been there. Yes, there'll be some grumblings, but I'll tell you that grumbling doesn't last once the prime minister gets in the room, and it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't do anything. What happens to the government of Canada and the government of BC is what the premier and the prime minister want to happen, nothing more, nothing less. And until we grasp that issue and realize that when our MLAs and MPs tell us contrary, they're lying through their teeth, then we're not going to have made the proper start to get ourselves back on track. But they have. I got a letter from an MP yesterday, a guy I've known for years. I like him very much. He works very hard and works in fishing issues, which I'm very concerned about and have been for a long time. And he started on this business about how they're working through caucus to do this and that. Oh, for God's sake, spare me. You know, please don't become a hypocrite just so I can talk to an old friend. You know that that's nonsense. You know that there's nothing you can do. And and I'll tell you very quickly a little story about this chap, and he is really a very, very good guy. Early on, I talked to him in this vein about his lack of power. Oh, he said, we've got a lot of power in caucus. Only the other day we had a full caucus meeting about how the refugees are being treated coming into Canada. I said, oh, were you against Mr. Trudeau's policy? Oh, no. We were just against the way the public servants were treating them coming in. I said, well, try being against the policy and see where you get. I said, that's the key issue. Anybody can be on the side of God, but when you get on the side of what you want and you think your people want, that's a different story. Now, mind you, I support the refugee issue. I'm not saying I don't. I'm simply saying that they will tell you that they do the easy things, and they will pat themselves on the back and make a big noise, and the prime minister will pat them on the head. But when it gets down to any of the tough sledding, they don't say a damn thing, because if they do, they're out of caucus. If they're out of caucus, they're out of the party. If they're out of the party, they can't run for the party for parliament again, and their political careers are over. It's just that bloody simple.
Could the true nature of Trudeau be revealed by the fact that his government, again, has approved Bill C-51 that takes away a lot of your basic rights if someone thinks that you might or could or should be slightly even connected to any kind of something the government deems terrorism?
Well, I've been horrified by that from the very beginning, and it's as a matter of fact, in a way, if it's the same bill, I think it rather impacts me and a lot of other people who, through no fault of their own, are dual citizens and could be caught up in what some government thinks is terrorism because the country they've never seen in their life but claims them as a citizen is doing nasty things. And this is a terrible thing to get into. You're either a Canadian or you're not. And if you're a Canadian, you have rights and you have obligations. And those obligations include being loyal to the country, and that's that. No ifs, ands, and buts. And to go on and say, well, I think that Ruritania has got some rules in there we're a little scared of, and oh, Gard, he's an old Ruritanian from way back. We better watch him. Those sorts of things are so scary, Jim. And I know that sounds silly, but that's what's happening. And it's truly what's happening. I am a second-class citizen in my own country, 6 generations on one side. I'm a second-class citizen because my father was stupid enough to have been born in New Zealand, and they automatically make the children of New Zealand citizens. So whether I liked it or not, I was a citizen, and by that reason, I am a second-class Canadian citizen. That's just one example, but that is a very good example of the attitude that we inherited from the Harper government, and which we haven't cleaned out, and we should and we must.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. The Trudeau government is making noises about changing the way we vote. Will this be a valid process?
Of course not. Of course not. The Liberal Party of Canada doesn't recognize a valid process. Now, neither does anybody else, I suppose, really, because we're so used to being told what to do by our betters. But this is not going to be the process to do this. We have a good example in New Zealand back in I guess it was the 90s or the early turn of the century, when they had, as I recall, they had two referendums. One was whether or not they wanted to stay with first past the post or go with something different. Then when first past the post was rejected, they were given, I think it was 3 alternatives, and they voted on that. So while they didn't select from a million different systems, they had a good choice of the basic systems available, and they chose them, and it was theirs. And that's process. The process we're going to have here is the Liberal Party process. This is going to be done by the Liberal caucus in Parliament. Now, if people living in British Columbia think that represents all of us, well, you've been smoking something illegal for too long. It represents really Ontario and Quebec. That's what it's all about. And they will have a process that they'll like. It'll be some kind of selective process. I forget what they call it now because it irritates me so much. But they're not going to go to proportional representation. They wouldn't do that in a million years. If they did that, they'd lose. You can't expect Trudeau to lose. And it would be a different system entirely. And my God, it would be a fair system. Can't have that. But it's not going to be. It's not going to be a process at all. And I can tell you that I was asked by the fair voting people and others to offer some assistance. Not any great assistance, but I've been in, as you know, the constitutional game for a long time, going back to the patriation exercise. And I took a look at this, and when they told me there wasn't going to be any referendum to let people decide what they wanted, I said, count me out. How can you have a democratic process installed without the people democratically installing it? I mean, it's Jesus. I get so frustrated when I talk with you on these things, Jim, because it is really so flustering. Here we're going to make a democratic decision in the back rooms of Parliament according to what Mr. Trudeau wants, and it's just so Canadian, isn't it?
Well, a friend of mine tried to go through the courts and bring in direct democracy, where the average person using their cell phone or computer could vote on local issues, national issues. We have the technology to do it. He was laughed out of court. He said they didn't even seriously listen to his arguments. And he says in the Constitution it says Canadians shall have a say in the affairs of government. He says it doesn't say once every 5 years. It says they shall. It doesn't put time limits on it.
No, and you're fighting against thunder on those things, Jim, and it's I was going to say it's sad, but it's also for a guy that's been around the ring as many times as I have on these things. It's very disappointing and very annoying, but I guess I have to get philosophical about it. I said to the lady from the fair voting, or very fine people, and they really want to have change. I'm not criticizing them. I think they're on the wrong track because they're going to do what they're told. But I said to her, I would not put myself in the position of doing what I was told when I was supposed to be making a free democratic decision and supposed to be presenting arguments in favor of increasing democracy. Why would I put myself in the position where instead of doing that, I do what Mr. Trudeau told me to do? That negates the whole process, but as I say again, it's so Canadian, and if you ask the question, is it going to be a fair, etc.? Of course not.
Rafe, is too much being made out of so-called elbow gate?
Oh, I think so. I don't know how that got out of hand, but I think it's too much. It's when you think of things that have happened in the past, I think though that there is an explanation here. Most of the times these things have happened in the past, they've been in some foreign parliament, a Japanese parliament or something like that, where somebody has swung something, or even in the English parliament where they've swung the mace, etc. This is the first time that little Lord Fauntleroy's got himself in trouble. Now, he's not expected. He is so nice and clean. It's horrible to think that this nice young boy would get himself into that sort of trouble in the Parliament of Canada. People just can't believe it. they could believe it of Harper, they wouldn't have paid 5 minutes of attention to Harper. But my God, Justin Trudeau, oh goodness, we can't have that. What a nice young boy.
Rafe, I know you've had some difficult times there health-wise, but I really thank you for taking the time out to speak with us.
It's always a pleasure, Jim. Thank you for calling.
Thanks, Rafe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. My guest has been Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Comments or questions for the show can be emailed to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.